Imagine a QA agent which is available with you 24/7 and it does your testing for you. So you give it a task and it fills in the form fields for you, just like it is doing right now in front of my Angular dashboard here. And you can see here that I have my cursor agent running and is interacting with the Playwright MCP server in real time, and it's trying to fill out my form just like a real tester would do. So you can see that it has just given the phone number here just by itself. So now it's inputting the street address, the city, the state on by its own. And this is not all it can do. So it can also test in specific fields to see whether the errors are appearing, because it can take snapshots of the UI as well. So you can see that it's now testing the first name field. I gave it 3 test cases. So it should be minimum field, the maximum field error, and required field error. So let's see whether it checks that. So now it's checking the minimum field error here. So we must have at least 3 characters. It's trying out the minimum character. Now it's checking the maximum field validation error. And as it happens that I haven't implemented the maximum field validation error just for this case so that I can really test out whether the AI agent works as it's supposed to. So you can see here now that it has entered the maximum field text on by its own, but it's not able to, and it's checking why the validation error is not appearing, because apparently it's not appearing. Okay, so here it has given back a report here, and you have a required field validation. It says that this field is required is displayed, minimum length validation must be at least 3 characters displayed, but for the maximum length validation I wasn't able to observe a specific error message. So all of this just done by the QA agent here, or the AI agent here in Cursor, linked with the Playwright MCP server. And the great thing is, this is not magic. This is basically the model context protocol in all its glory. I'll tell you all about it in this video, and I'll tell you how I have set this up in Cursor so that I can test my own apps, so that I can let the Cursor agent do my testing for me. I just give it the test cases and I can just sip coffee or do anything else in the meantime. Okay, so first let's start with introducing the MCP and what it is. So MCP is the Model Context Protocol, which is an open specification introduced by Anthropic, which is the creators of Claude, the famous AI model. But now it is basically a way to interact with external tools. Now how it does that is given in a brief way in this diagram. So you can see that there are some hosts here, which is the MCP client. Now this client can be anything. So it can be ChatGPT or Claude AI, or you can have your IDE. So for example, I had here Cursor IDE here. That is your MCP client. And then you have your MCP server. Now a clearer diagram is in the introduction to the Model Context Protocol by Mahesh Murag of Anthropic himself. And he specified that, okay, you can have any MCP client here like this. And then you can have different MCP servers. So you can say that you have a database MCP server. Now an MCP server basically exposes an interface or different functions that you can call for the MCP client to call, so that it can get different data, it can do different operations, and that depends on the specific MCP server. So in this database, for example, you can query and fetch the data, and you provide that interface to the MCP client so that whenever the AI agent or the LLM wants to do that specific thing, it can just call that MCP server, and then it has its own interface with the specific database or anything. Now in our case, since we want to create a QA agent, we want to call an external testing tool for that purpose, and we are going to use Playwright here, because Playwright is basically an end-to-end testing tool which we can use to test it on the browser, and it's end-to-end. So the tests are not isolated, it's actually happening on the real application itself, okay, on a real deployment. So as it happens, Playwright is by Microsoft. So Microsoft has just recently introduced its own MCP server for Playwright. And so I wanted to try this out. Okay, so MCP is really cool, but how do we actually add it to our IDE, for example, VS Code or Cursor? So in my case, I'm going to do it for Cursor, but you can actually do it for VS Code as well, and for Windsurf or any AI-based code editor. All right. So in Cursor, what you do is you just go in your file preferences here and in your Cursor settings, and then there's a section called MCP here, and you do add new global MCP server. So you have an MCP configuration file in which you can add your config MCP servers from where it can get the MCP server information. All right. So here we're going to just copy this MCP server, this Playwright section within the MCP server, and we're just going to copy this inside this here like this. Okay. And now we're going to save this. Now, as soon as we save this and come back to Cursor settings, you're going to see that we have your Playwright MCP server enabled here. You can disable it if you want, and you can enable it like this. And then here you can see all of the functions that are exposed by this MCP server. So these are the functions all available to the LLM or the cursor agent here, so that it can use whatever function it needs and fulfill the task that we have given it for them. Okay. Now in our case, we'll be running a lot of tests. So it's going to use all of these functions to actually fulfill that test and find out whether the test passed or failed. All right. Great. So our Playwright MCP server is done. Now let's start testing out simple to advanced cases on my Angular dashboard starter template that I have here. Now you can do it on any web application. It's not restricted to Angular, but since I'm an Angular guy, I'm just going to do it on my own and see how it works out. Okay. So if I go to my terminal here, I can see that I already have my app deployed on localhost 4200. I'm going to close that now. So we just need to tell the cursor agent here that, okay, we need to test out something. And as it happens that it's going to automatically judge, okay, that you want to actually test it using the Playwright MCP server, because that's the only browser testing tool that we have currently installed. So I'm just going to say that as an initial test, I'm just going to say that please go to the forms section on my dashboard. The app is already running on 4200 on localhost 4200. Now I say that because if I don't tell it that, it's going to try to spin up a new server, which I don't want. Okay, so let's just try this out and see what happens. Now this is using the thinking model, so you can see that it spun up a Playwright browser for testing purpose here, and you can see that it navigated to the forms here. Great. So let me just split this out a bit, and I just want to see how it works out here. And you can see that it says that I've successfully navigated to the forms section of your dashboard. The page displays a comprehensive form with the following sections, and it's given me the summary of the page. Okay, so this means that it can read the page and it can actually get information about the page. Now, it's something really interesting is it's basically does not take a whole snapshot. So if you can see the browser snapshot, what it does is that it gets a sort of an accessibility snapshot. It gets all of the buttons and their references, so that it is quicker and it does not take a whole pixel by pixel approach to it. Okay, this makes this tool faster for testing. All right, so let's move on to our next test. And now we want to fill in all of our form fields, because this is one of the things that I wanted to automate in my case. Okay, so I'm just going to say that, okay, please fill in all the required form fields on the form, and then just leave it as it is, so I can click on save myself. I say that I can click on save myself because this is exactly the scenario that I want to do, because this really helps me out in client testing. I want to enter large forms repeatedly, so I want the AI to do it for me and just let me do the saving part after I verified that it's okay. All right. Now make sure that you are in the agent mode as well. So this is the default mode now in the new cursor version. Make sure you use the agent mode, because otherwise it's not going to do the back and forth which is required to actually implement the test, okay, and to test various scenarios that you have given. Also, one more thing that I missed out was that you also need to enable YOLO mode, which is that you need to enable auto mode in your agent. So you need to go to your file preferences here again in your cursor settings, and in the general features here, you will see a section in the chat, enable auto run mode. Now this is by default disabled because you don't want the agent to do all of the funny things like deleting files and stuff. But in this case, you need to do that. And it's going to give you, once you enable it, it's going to give you a disclaimer as well that, okay, this is dangerous. Well, it is somewhat dangerous, but we are going to enable this just to test it out. And you can have specific denial commands that you don't want to, some dangerous commands that you don't want it to execute in any case. So you can add those here. I'm just using the delete file protection, so I don't want anything to be deleted. So I'm enabling this so that it does not delete any files in the process of this. And you can obviously have other safeguards here if you are more concerned about, okay, the agent not doing anything to your code itself. Okay, but we do need to enable auto run mode here, because otherwise it's going to ask permission from you for every little browser snapshot or entering all of the details. It's not going to be really autonomous. Okay, so once we enable this, now we can run this test and see what it brings out. So we need to fill in all the required form fields on the form and then just leave as it is. All right. So now it's taking a list of all of the form fields for you. And now it started filling the forms just like that. I don't know why it comes with the name John, but this seems to be a very common name. So it's just So it's also filling in the middle name here. Okay, John Robert Smith. All right. The date of birth apparently is already filled, so it's not going to do anything for that. It's going to judge in all the fields. It's sort of tabbing through the fields somehow. And it has given a nice email and the phone number you can see. And you can see that it's calling the MCP tool here with this parameters and with this result, which is basically just a function call, as you can see here. So it says that there might be an issue with the phone number field, and it's honestly, it's because I haven't restricted the non-numeric fields here. So yeah, that's an issue. And that is something that gives me something to think about when I want to change the application. So it's sort of leading me towards fixing a bug. Okay. So now it has noticed the error as well here, and it's now like try to fix that error by reading that error that okay, it needs to be 10 characters here. The phone number needs to be 10 characters. So all awesome. This is all what a real QA tester would do. All right. So now it's moving on to the address, the apartment, the city. Now I always struggle with all of these things because I need to figure out, a real world data. But the great thing about the AI is that it has a lot of data. It can bring out the real world data according to the context that it's operating in by itself. Okay, great. So it has now filled in all of the fields, and it's now going to say that okay, I filled in all of the fields here and the address and the location. The form is now completely filled and ready for you to click the save button when you're ready. Now we can click the save button and we can do whatever you want to do it with it. Okay, so we can do this repeatedly and it's going to really help us in automating our form filling process here. Okay, so even if I use it just for this, it's a huge time saver for me. In real projects, it's going to be really helpful. Okay, now talking about form fields, this form section is basically part of my Angular starter template, which has a nice little dashboard here. And I'd like to tell you a bit more about it so that you can, if you're interested in a starter template yourself, you're starting on an Angular project, you can give this some consideration at least. Okay, so you have a drag and drop dashboard here, a nice little dashboard here, which you can customize it according to your needs. And it's not just customizing the widgets itself, but you can also change the sizes like this. It has view transitions API for the animations. Here you can see seamless animations, and you can change the sizes here according to, you can even remove the widgets that you would want. You can push it to the widgets here and then you can put it back here. So it's a really interactive dashboard that I've built. It's really nice for those cases where you want it. Obviously, the dashboard, the starter template has a dark mode. It has your material components implemented. It has a nice loader here, and it has all of the components, the forms. It has Tailwind CSS integrated, and obviously it also has the latest version here, which is Angular version 19.2 and Tailwind version 4. So if you're on the lookout for a good starter template for Angular, do give this a try, and the link is in the description. If you get it at this price, you are also going to get all of the future features for free here as well. Okay, now let's get back to testing this. Okay, so the next test that we want to do is a bit more specific. So let's see whether it can do anything like testing a specific field for various validation errors. So I'm going to test out the first name. I have about 3 validations on it implemented in code and I want to test them out. So please test out the following 3 validation errors, 3 validations on the first name field. So first is the required field validation. Second is the minimum field validation of 3 characters, and then a maximum field, maximum 100 characters. And check whether the error messages show up on the UI near the fields. Okay, so let's see what it does now. Here, so it's planning the next moves, and let's see what it does. So it's calling the MCP tool again. As you can see here, it's checking the first name. It's trying to get the first snapshot, and it's interesting, it gets the snapshot and the IDs and then it tries to interact with them. So apparently it cannot clear it because of some issue. So now it's going to try an alternative way to do that. So these things happen sometimes. Okay, it's now trying to type it directly. So now it's typing it directly and now it's trying to empty it out, and it got the required field error, as you can see, and it says that yes, I can see that. So now it's trying the minimum characters error. It came up with an error candidate itself, and now it's trying to test the maximum character. It came out with some error itself, and you can see that we get the error in real time. And now it says perfect. I've successfully tested all 3 validations on the first name field and all work correctly. And it also gives me the specific error that it is getting. That means that it shows me that it is actually getting the snapshot and not just hallucinating things out of thin air. Okay, great. So this test works. Now let's just remove one validation error and then run this test again to see whether it is really running a test or it's just making things up. So let me go to the forms component itself and let me just remove the validation's maximum length error here. And let's save this and let's run this again. Run this test again. Okay, let's go back up here and let's test this again. Okay, good. Let's see what this works. Okay, it's testing the required field validation. So it's going to try directly entering information. Sometimes it's kind of gets stuck and I have to click on continue here. So you can see that now does this field is required. So I can see the validation error and it's working fine. Then it tests the minimum length validation. It's working fine as well. Then it tests the maximum length validation. Now let's see what it does here because it's not going to be able to verify this. So now it's trying out different cases. So it's trying to, it's saying let me try adding one more character to exceed the 100 character limit. So it's trying out different cases, different messages just to test out what the issue could be so that it can help me out to fix this issue in the future. Okay, so now it's testing out different things. So now you can see that it says a question mark on the maximum length validation here. So it tried entering strings. These two error messages work fine, but for this it says that the maximum length validation may not be implemented for this field. So there are different cases that this. So basically it's this the first case, and the QA testing agent is basically giving me great feedback according to the code change that I did. Okay, great. So now we know that we can do even more complex different types of cases, which is typically how you implement test cases for a QA, for a real QA team as well. Okay, so next let's test out something more complex device. As I showed you before, I have this interactive dashboard which involves drag and drop and all other stuff. So how do we test something like this? So let's try whether we can test something like this. So we're going to go in a new chat and I want to test the resizing functionality of this widget. So I'm going to say that please try resizing the channel analytics, okay, analytics widget by enabling edit mode and then clicking on the settings button. Now you can see here that I'm trying to be specific so that there's no room for ambiguity, and this is how you would do it in a real test as well. Okay, and then clicking on the settings button, increase the size to 3, verify that it has changed, then decrease back to 2, verifying that it has changed. Let's see what it does here and let's see whether it makes those changes. Okay, I forgot to tell it that okay, I already have it deployed. So it's trying to deploy this again, but it's sort of figured out that okay, I don't need to deploy it. So now it's going to tell it to the browser snapshot again, and you can see that it goes into edit mode, it goes into settings, and it's doing exactly what I told it to do. And you can see that it goes into the settings, and now it's trying to change the size, and yes, it has changed the size to 3 here, and it can confirm that okay, it has changed to 3. It's taking the screenshot, and now it should reduce the size to 2, and now all of this time you can also see and you can also sort of supervise it, and you can see that okay, the test is running fine and there's no funny thing happening here. So you can skip and continue. Okay, and now you can see that it has reduced it to 2, and now it's going to verify that okay, it's reduced to 2 now. Okay, so this works, but after some hiccups, so it struggled a bit in the middle. I had to resume it, and then it sort of there was a network problem and it stopped midway, but it could resume easily. All right, so let's continue on this, and it says that you can see in the final state that the edit mode is active. The edit mode is active. The channel analytics widget setting is open. The width is set to 2. The channel analytics widget appears correctly. The resize functionality is working as expected. Okay. Now I just want to do something specific. I want to test something specific, and I want to say that okay, try to resize the channel analytics widget in view mode and verify that it is not possible to do. Let's just see what it does now, because it's a real world use case that we want to test out. I want to restrict changing the settings when in view mode. Okay, so now it is going into view mode and it will now try to test it out. So it's now trying to do different things. So it's now trying to click the settings button would be to confirm that it's not available. It's now taking a snapshot and seeing whether the settings button is available or not, and it comes back as it's supposed. So I verified that it's not possible to reset the channel analytics widget in view mode. I successfully switched to view mode. In view mode, there are no settings buttons visible for any of the widgets. There's no way to access the width and height controls. The only action available for the channel analytics is go to channel analytics button. Great. So it has verified this. So it is possible to do it for relatively simple UI tasks as well, like this, okay, clicking on buttons and stuff. But for the drag and drop, I basically tested it out but it's not that predictable, so it's not really that useful. But that's something to sort of be expected, because a drag and drop is a complex operation and it sort of requires you to have more information about, where you are dragging drop. So it can be a bit difficult to implement for any testing framework. Okay, so I just want to end this by testing out a whole flow of the application, an end-to-end test, so that you can get a good idea of how it can also test in complete flows of your application to see whether everything is working fine correctly together. I want to test out the login flow of my application. So as it works in my application, you have a login page, and once you log in, you're not allowed to go back to the login page till you log out. Okay. And again, if you're on the login page, you're not allowed to go to the dashboard or any other routes because you are not logged in. So you should be redirected back to the login page. So these are the two things that I want to test out. And I already have a prompt here. As you can see, I want to test out the login flow of the app by logging with any of the available user credentials. The credentials are given here. Again, be more specific and you're going to get a good result out of the QA agent. And once logged in, you verify that you're on the dashboard and you're not allowed to go back to the login route. Then log out by using the logout button on the top right menu, and then verify that you are logged out and redirect to the login page, and verify that you're not allowed to go to the dashboard route. And of course, the app is already running on localhost, otherwise it's going to try to spin up its own server. Okay, so let's try and run this and see what happens. So you can see that it's on the login page. It's now calling the MCP tool, and it got the credentials from here. It's going to log in with the first account. It's going to enter the password, the credentials, then it's going to click on login, and it goes into the dashboard here like this. Okay, now I'm successfully logged in and redirected. Now it's trying to go back to the login, but it's not going to go back. Okay, great. It says I tried to navigate to the login, but I was redirected back to the dashboard. So that is a complex behavior that you can test it out. Now it's log out again. Just by telling us the location of the logout button, it logged out, and now it's going to test whether it can go on the dashboard. It's not allowed to the dashboard route. So now it says that he wants to verify that I cannot access the dashboard. And then it says that finally I attempted to navigate to the dashboard route, but I was redirected back to the login page, confirming that I'm not allowed to access the dashboard when logged out. Now this flow basically tells me that my authentication guards are working correctly, my redirections are working correctly, and my login flow is working flawlessly. Great. So I hope this series of tests showed you that the whole capability of the MCP Playwright server paired with your agent, and how you can have something similar to your team in your organization. In fact, your own personal QA team, which is available to you 24/7, which you can give your QA tests cases, and it can run those test cases and it can give a report out, and you can just do other things in the meanwhile, increasing your productivity as a developer. Okay, so of course, it's not a panacea for all issues. Now, I'm not advocating that you fire off all your QA team immediately, but with the supervision of the QA team, at the very least, you can actually use these tools to speed up your QA testing workflow. You can implement this in your QA department, in your organization, and this is going to really help you to do things faster rather than doing everything manually. Okay, so I hope you liked this video, and thanks for watching. Until next time, I'm going to bring you something more interesting about the web application, about Angular development and testing your Angular applications, and using more AI in the process.